Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Graveyard Raven, and I'm sipping on some mint tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, purple violet, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, green oxide, and cobalt blue. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes from my personal brush line, which is Michelle the Painter brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 bright brush, and I have a number 6 round brush. I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process, and of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout the painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our sky. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, purple, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a really moody, dark, autumn-esque kind of sky. It's going to be dark at the top and it's going to be lighter down at the bottom. I'm going to start with black and purple on my brush, and then I'll be introducing the brown and some white and some more purple as I come down the sky. You could really have this as dark or as light as you want. I'm just going for a nice, mysterious, you know, haunty kind of look for my sky, so I'm going for these real dark tones. I don't want it to go all the way black through the whole sky, so I'm just going to use the majority of the black at the top, and then I'm going to have it almost like misty and lighter down at the bottom. I'm going to start with black and purple on my brush, about equal parts of both. I'm going to be using left to right crisscross type of brush stroke as I go through this. The black will easily overpower the situation or your painting, so I would be cautious about how much black that you use from this point down. I'm not going to wash my brush, but I am going to pick up more purple to get a little bit of purple hue going on in these lighter areas. Now I'm going to pick up maybe some brown and purple, and I have not washed my brush. So there are going to be areas that when I push my brush, it will release more of that black paint onto my canvas, and that's how it's going to give it kind of a cloudy type of look. And you can certainly add more darkness to it. If you're coming down and you say, I'd really like a little bit more dark, by all means, I just picked up a tiny bit more black. Add it onto it. Don't feel the need to make yours exactly as mine. And as it dries, I'll tend to kind of go back and keep blending it. Right now, I'm going to add purple, brown, and just a tiny touch of white on my brush. So I have a good amount of purple and brown and just a teeny tiny bit of white. This is where I'm going to start to get my sky to go lighter and lighter as it's coming down my canvas. I'm not always going to be using the I'm not always going to pick up those three colors. At times, like right now, maybe I'll just pick up purple and brown as I come down this sky. But without washing my brush, what's going to happen is if I have little remnants of that white on there, it's going to allow for that sky to get lighter and lighter and these colors to intermingle. I will also, so right now I'm going to be alternating between my purple, brown, and white as I do the remainder of this sky. And at times, like right now, I picked up purple and white. And in a minute, I might pick up brown and white. And as I get towards the bottom of the canvas, I'll be using a lot of white on my brush. But I most likely, for a sky like this, will do a second layer on it. Because I know when we're working with these darker colors, when there is a light background behind those dark colors, they will tend to be really streaky, and you might see the evidence of that back of the white canvas below it. So for me, I will most likely do a second coat on this. I'll let it dry, and then I'll attack it with a second coat the same way that I approached this first coat, and that'll help me to get it to look a little bit softer, a little bit more cloudy-esque, and work out any of those almost unfinished marks that I might find. Like I've got these little kind of brush vertical marks in through here. I might not get all of those out on this first go around, so a second coat would definitely allow me to get that to look a little bit smoother. And as you can see, I'm going really light down at the bottom, almost to give it like more of a misty kind of look or a foggy look. You could certainly do almost a circular type brush stroke too, especially down at the bottom. That would make it look really kind of soft and graveyard-esque with some light, fog or mist down at the bottom. But that'll be your call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry. I will do a second coat to it, and then when I feel like I've got it in the blend that I want, what I will do is I'm going to be using my, we're going to actually use our medium brush for the next step. So you can put the large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to do the base coat for our gravestones. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black and white. And what I'm in essence going to be doing is just giving myself some nice basic shapes. You can certainly customize this as much as you'd like to and have them resemble any type of gravestone that you would like. And I'm going to give it kind of a little bit of a textured type of effect to make it resemble a little bit of stone. I am going to make myself a custom dark gray color to start, which I have magically done. Oh, I do want to recommend also, before you start this step, make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So the custom gray color that I'm going for is right here. How I got to that was I used a bunch of black and just a little bit of white. I do want it to be nice and dark gray, but I definitely want it to be lighter than black, so that way we can add some dimensional elements to it. So this is about where I'm headed, and you can see when I hold it next to my black that it is a little bit lighter than that. So you can see the difference between those two. Once I've got that on there, I'm going to have one large headstone in the center, and then I'll just have two kind of decorative ones flanking the edges. So I'm going to make my biggest one first. I'm going to find myself about the center of my canvas, top to bottom, left to right. So for me, that's about here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from that about 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and then over to the left about 2.5 inches. I'm going to make myself just a little bit of a marker. I'm going to come over back to the center of my canvas here, and then go over to the right, maybe about an inch, and just down just a touch. What I'm doing is I'm giving myself a couple of barriers so I don't make it too big or too small. And then whatever I did here, I can measure with my brush, and then I'm going to go and do a diagonal mark like this. So what I've just done is I've created this really cool kind of a geometrical type of shape for the top of my gravestone. And then what I'm going to do, because that's where my bird is going to sit, then I can kind of create the shape of this whatever way I want. I'm just going to have a couple of, I'm going to have it coming down like that. It's going to be a little bit to the side, tipped in the ground to the side a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of make myself a couple of decorative jagged marks or, you know, shapes to it. And then I'm just going to bring this all the way down to the bottom of my canvas, something like this. And of course you can have yours shaped whatever way you want. I'm going to have mine just looking like it's kind of stuck in the ground at an angle. So I've got that in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my gray and I'm going to apply it in this circular type of brush stroke throughout the entire, oops, I just made it grow a little bit, throughout the entire area. And this is going to allow me to have, one, a nice textural type of effect to it, but two, it's also going to provide me with a way that I can add little bits of highlights and shadows throughout this, we'll call it like a stone type of texture. So I've got my circular type of pattern started, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add little bits of highlights and shadows, or light spots and dark spots. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black and I'm going to go for a little bit down at the bottom of my gravestone. So while it's wet, just adding this little bit of black in through here, and then with my dirty brush I'm going to pick up a little bit of white and do the same thing up on the top right hand side of my gravestones. I'm going to have my light source is up on the top right of my canvas or in the sky. So this light area on the top of this stone is going to make a lot of sense. And I'm just kind of tapping in this circular motion just to give myself a little bit of texture to it. And then I will approach the other two stones in the same way. You could certainly do multiple layers on this, but I'm just going for a nice simplistic kind of texture to it. We'll do our other details in a little bit, like our word or our bright highlights and shadows. So I've got my my dark gray on my brush. I'm just going to do a kind of a semicircle down in this corner in through here for a little tip of a gravestone, and then again I can add a tiny bit of black on my brush to get this little bit in the bottom left hand corner, and then a tiny bit of white on my brush to get a little bit of a highlight on the stone up at the top. And again, I'm just using a circular type of brush stroke. You could certainly again let it dry if you wanted to before you add this texture to it, but I like doing it when it's wet because the all the colors will start to talk together. I'm just wiping my brush off, reloading with some of my dark gray, and I'm going to have a cross type of a headstone or grave marker in through here. And again, make yours whatever you want. Maybe you've got a local cemetery that's got some really cool old headstones to it. I know where I grew up, we had this really old cemetery that had the most incredible gravestones in it, and my siblings and I used to kind of go and play in the graveyard. We had a fun game that we actually called Ghost in the Graveyard, which was a fun game to play as a youth. And then once I've got this done, again, I'm picking up my tiny bit of black paint to get a little bit of darkness down at the bottom, and then pick up my white paint, get a little bit of lightness up at the top. And then once you've got this done, we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to finish my gravestones. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm using are black and white, and if I need to go into that gray, actually I'll probably use that gray as well, so black, white, and gray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write whatever message I want on any of these gravestones. You can also do decorative elements if you want little scroll marks or anything like that. I'm just going to keep mine simple and just write R.I.P., rest in peace. So I'm going to have that on this one, and I'm going to do highlights and shadows based on where my light source is going to be. So I'm in my head, I've got the moon is going to be our light source, and I've got it way up in the sky, a little bit to the right, and you know, towards the viewer a little bit. So I'm going to have bright spots on the right kind of edges of the right and the top edges of my stones, and then dark areas on the left-hand side of my stones. But what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put my letters in place with a little bit of black paint. So I've got black paint on my brush. You could certainly draw out these letters, whatever you'd like, but I'm just going to kind of keep mine simple with RIP. Because it's 3 letters that I know can be symmetrical, I'm going to actually put my center letter on first, and that'll help me to space my other ones. So I'm just going to put my I in place, and these can be, really old and kind of jaggedy, so don't feel like you have to have your letters perfect, because if they're cut in stone, depending on what tool that craftsman cut the letters could make a difference as to how perfect these lines are. And I'm just kind of keeping it at a similar angle as my stone and trying, if you're doing these kind of things, just trying to spell them correctly. I know that, I have a tendency to make spelling errors on my paintings for some odd reason, but and then I'm just going to put my R over here, trying to keep them kind of the same size in through there, and then I'm going to just put a little dot in between each of these letters like that. And while that's kind of drying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, because I'm going to do another little detail around these letters. But while it's drying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and put my shadows on my other parts of my stones. So I know that I want a little bit of shadow on this left-hand side. So I've just got my black paint on my brush. And I'm just really, you can make this really 3D type of looking. But again, my focal point is going to be more the bird on here. So I don't necessarily need to do a whole lot of details in through here, just kind of giving myself the little essence of maybe, a 3D type of, a little bit of a 3D type of look to it. I've got my black on my brush. I'm going to go do the same thing on this little guy over here, just bringing a little bit of black over on this left-hand side. And you could certainly reshape them if you wanted to. I'm also going to put a little bit of black on these bottom sides in through here, just to give that little shadow down in through here, maybe a little bit in through here. I know my light source is up a little bit and this stone is crooked a little bit, but that's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to conversely put my highlights on. So washed and dried my brush. I'm putting a little bit of white paint on my brush. I feel I'd have a highlight on this side of this one over in through here. And while you're doing this, if you feel that you want to do any other adjustments on that face of the stone, feel free to do so. You don't have to just say, I'm putting my highlight and I can't do anything else. You can certainly make any little adjustments. I just put actually my gray and white on my brush to get this edge, because it was not doing what I wanted. So I picked up a little bit of that gray. Now I'm going back into my white in through here, just get this edge just a little brighter. Yeah, that looks good. And again, just picking up my white. So anytime you feel that the need, pick up a little bit of that original gray. This, because the light source is kind of up here, I feel like these, quite a bit of these edges would be illuminated. So I'm just using white right now. If the white is too bright for you and you want to dull it down a little bit, you could certainly use a little bit of your gray. But that's going to be a judgment call on your visual preference. And it might turn a little bit darker as it dries anyways, because it is on a dark background. I think I'm going to illuminate this corner of the stone a little bit more. So I'm picking up my gray plus that white that I had on my brush. I feel like I want the corner of this stone to be a little bit brighter. So just a little bit of that gray and white is going to help me do the trick that I want it to do and get it as bright as I want it to go. And then just pick up my gray to get it to blend out, and then I'll illuminate that other stone as well. I know, again, my focal point's going to be my bird. So this is just, the decorative elements that are going to tell my story. I'm picking up a little bit more white. I'm going to illuminate the tip top of this stone in through here, this little edge here, this little edge here, and maybe a touch of this little spot in through here. And now I'm going to add a little bit of highlight around these letters. So I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of paint on my brush, a little bit of white and my gray, so a little bit of both. And this is just going to make these make the stone look like it's raised out a little bit and make the letters look like they've been carved in. So I have a little bit of gray and white on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of put it on the side that the light source is coming from, and that's going to be kind of the right top side. And I don't need it to be really clean. I kind of want it to be on the messier side, so it just looks like the stone is catching the light right around these letters. And of course, you could, if you wanted yours to have a more dramatic effect, you could certainly make yours into, you know, whatever intensity that you want. I'm just going for a nice kind of subtle effect here. And this also helps to just allow these letters to be more visible. So it's providing kind of this cool 3D effect with the stone, but it's also serving a purpose for us to be able to see these letters a little bit better as well. And then you just fiddle with it as much as you want. We're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our bird. I'm going to be using my piece of chalk. You could certainly use any drawing utensil that you'd like. I tend to steer a lot with my chalk because it's nice and easy to erase if I need to make a correction. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers and basic shapes so we can use those to during the painting in process. So we have some nice shapes that we can use as for base coats and stuff. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with a circular shape for the head, and then we're going to build everything else off of that. I'm going to have, my bird is going to be very large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the top of my bird is going to be about up in this vicinity, and my bird is going to be just about as wide or as big as my headstone. So it's a really large, imposing bird. I hear that they are symbols of protection of sorts too. So I thought it'd be very cool to have this in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, find myself about the center of my canvas. So for me, this is right about here. Then I'm going to go up from that almost halfway between my center and my top of my canvas. So if this is about halfway, I'm just a little bit below that. And then I'm going to go to the right about 1/2 inch, make myself my first little marker. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the right of that about 2.5 to 3 inches, make myself another mark. I can come to the center of that, and then however wide you did these, you're going to do a mark at the same height and the same distance from the center. So you can take anything as a measuring tool, measure how far you did those, and then just kind of spin it into the other direction. Give yourself a marker at the top and at the bottom that are about of equal distance. That's just going to give you a head start on making a circular type of object. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just connect my dots to give myself something that is close to a circle. Again, doesn't have to be perfect. This is just going to start our painting process. That's going to be representational of the head. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my beak on. These birds have pretty large beaks. This one I'm going to have, let's give it a measurement here so you know how long it's going to be. I'm going to have mine about this long. So mine is almost as long as my circle. So whatever your length of your circle is, just go a little bit shorter than that. And I'm going to make myself a dot kind of in a diagonal fashion to this right hand side. Then what I'm going to do, these birds have kind of, I want to give the head a little bit more of a curve. So I'm going to start right about here. I'm going to bring it out just a little bit, somewhere in through here. And then I'm going to curve it to my beak in through there. On the bottom side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it from about here. I'm going to give it a little bit of an inward curve. And then these beaks are kind of like bulbous in the middle, and then they point down at the end. So I'll just bump it out just a tiny bit, not a lot, just a little bit, and then bring it back towards the tip and through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the head to there's a wing over here. We're going to be doing the entire bird with a black coat, so I don't really necessarily have to make all of my delineations at this point, but I don't want to make this neck area too long. There's going to be a wing back here, my body is here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take from here, this little area in through here, and I'm going to connect it down to here. How I'm going to do that is I've got my point of my headstone in through here. I'm going to go a little bit to the right, but you might not have the same kind of headstone as me. So to find a similar spot, this is the center of my canvas. I came over maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches and then down about 2 inches. So that's going to give me that marker in through there. Then I'm just going to come up about 1 inch, and now I'm going to connect here to here with a little bit of a curving line. So I'm going to take this and connect it like this. This is going to give me the belly or chest area. Now what I can do is I can come down here just a little bit in through there, and then over on this right hand side of my headstone, I'm going to connect these two with a little bit of an arcing line. Nothing major. This is just going to be the wing kind of hiding behind the headstone in through there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a big wing kind of coming over on this side. I need to connect my head to that wing, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to create the back of the neck in through here. I'm going to take from here, I'm going to give it a little bit of a curved line, and I'm going to stop right about here. So this is almost directly above this marker in through here. So somewhere in that vicinity is where I stop. I'm going to give myself the tip of the wing on the other side. So from here, I'm going to just give myself this little kind of curved line in through there. And then this is going to be the tip of the wing that is closest to us. I'm going to connect here to here with just a long kind of wavy type of line. I want it to have a little bit of movement, so I'm going to bring it in just a little bit and then just kind of bump it out just a little bit like that. So it's got a little bit of movement to it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give myself the left side of the wing, as well as a little bit of a tail that's going to go behind my my headstone in through here. I don't want it to go too out of control for me, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the left of the tip or of this area in through here, all the way to the left until I'm about 1 inch away from the edge of my canvas. I'm going to connect here to up here with a long kind of wavy line. I'm going to bring it out a little bit like that, and then down like that. That's going to be the exterior of my wing. Now I can just kind of connect in through here with the tip or the edge of the wing. I'm going to have my tail back here. So I just need to kind of know where I'm headed. I'm going to have my tail tip down in through here. So now that I know that, I can give myself the edge of this wing in through here. I can give myself kind of the edge of the body in through here, give myself a little jaggedness. These are just going to be the tips of some feathers, and then I can kind of bring this down in this direction with my little tail behind there. Maybe we even have a little sliver where you're going to see the sky with a little bit of the tail. I'm also going to bring a couple of wing or little feathers in front of here, so I can just give myself a couple of markers where I want there to be some almost striped type of look in front of this this gravestone. And when we paint it in, this will make more sense. But right now, I'm just giving myself the essence of areas where I want to paint in a minute. So that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline. I'm going to be using my medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be painting the base coat for our bird. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The color I'm using is black. You could certainly in certain areas be using a gray tone to do the base coat, but I'm going to be using black because for me, building dimension and depth in feathers and things of that nature works best for me when I start nice and dark. So I'm going to be using as dark as I can to start this one. So I'm using my medium brush. The only trick here is in certain areas, I'm going to be leaving a little bit of my guidelines. So when I am doing this area, I'm going to leave a little bit of my chalk mark between my belly area and this wing, as well as this wing and this wing. So there's going to be, oops, as I just go completely over it. So there's going to be certain areas where I strategically leave my, a little bit of my guideline in order to help me through the painting process so I don't get lost with just one big blob of black paint as my base coat. And when you get to the edges, you can even leave a little bit of your chalk mark visible as well. Sometimes that will help to prevent you from overbuilding your objects, because as we go through the painting process, if we can't see where that original guideline is, sometimes we have a tendency to just make it grow and grow and grow. And by the time you're done, you've got a much larger object than you had intended to. So if you want to leave some of that chalk mark during this initial process, feel free to do so. You'll see that I leave it on several areas, just because, again, I know that I want to be careful and mindful about not making it too big, and that just helps me stay in control of where I want these things to go. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the same thing up in through here. And on these smaller areas, if you felt that you wanted to use a smaller brush, feel free to do so. That's going to be up to you. And you also may notice that using white chalk as your drawing utensil, that white chalk might bleed into the black paint a little bit, creating a grayish type of tone in certain areas, which is completely fine because we're going to be painting over a lot of this. And if you do have some areas that appear to be on the grayer side, there's no harm in that at all. And then I'm just going to go ahead and get this last area. I will do something a little bit different as it's crossing over my gravestone or headstone, whatever you'd like to call yours. So I'm going to just get this area up in through here, and again, just leaving the hint of my guidelines so that way I have so I don't get lost or forget where I've put them. And again, just the black paint is getting these. As I'm coming down towards the bottom, I'm going to start to slow down in a minute, getting down towards the edges or the tips of my feathers. I do want to make them look nice and natural, so I'm going to concentrate on giving these little jagged edges to them. And again, even if I have some of my chalk still showing, I'm okay with that. So what I do is I just kind of bring down these little points in the paint. These flat, bright brushes are great for creating these little pointy tips, and you can have them in varying thicknesses, so that way it'll make it look nice and natural. I'm going to go ahead and paint this whole back behind my gravestone with black, bringing it right to the edge in through here. But I'm going to cross over a couple of pieces of my of the feathers in just a second. Let me just get this on here. And this little section of my gravestone, black next to black, I can that's going to disappear behind my feathers anyway, so don't worry about that if you can't see the difference between those two little areas. And again, if you felt that you wanted to switch to a smaller brush in through here, feel free to do so, but I'm just gonna muscle through it. And if I do feel that I want to make any corrections with my small brush, I'll do that, but just bringing this down. And again, this little tip to the tail, just gonna give myself these couple of little pointy edges to it. This over here, I'm feeling like that's gonna be my tail edge. And then I'm gonna color this whole section black, and then I'm gonna cross over a couple of wing feathers in a second here. Just don't want to lose my thoughts in through here. That's looking good. So in through here where I made these couple of lines to guide me, I'm really just going to pull down like I did here and here, just kind of these straight or straight-ish lines with a little bit of a curve. This is going to start our wing making process, and I want to be able to have these little peekaboo spots of the gravestone, so that's why I'm choosing to do it this way. And then I can even, as I'm coming down this side, I could even pull out a couple kind of in a more curved fashion over in through here, because you'll see this wing has a whole bunch of different parts to it. So bringing a couple out in through here works, and that's looking pretty good to me. So we are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, and again, doesn't have to have perfect coverage, but once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the face. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are brown, white, blue, black, and my gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a base coat for the beak with a little bit, or building the beak with like a light grayish tone. These birds have these real short little feathers between their head that kind of lay on the top of their beak. So we'll be doing a little bit of feathers in through there. We'll put a little bit of a tiny eye in through here, and then we'll give some details. I'm going to start on my beak. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a lighter gray. So I'm going to take my gray and add a little bit of white to it, just to get myself a lighter version. We'll also be using this lighter version when we get to the wings as well. So know that we'll utilize this light gray color in a couple of different spots, but this is where I'm going to be starting for my beak. So that's looking pretty good to me. And my beak is going to, this gray portion of my beak is going to come about halfway, or even maybe 2/3 of the way down from, if you go from here, this is about halfway. I'm going to be a little bit below that is where I'm going to start this gray area. It's going to come over to the left a little bit, and then it's going to almost meet the eye. So I'm going to have my eye somewhere in through here. So I'm going to bring just a little skinny part of this in through here. I'm going to just kind of bring this down to this little point in through here, and then I'll bring this down in through here. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. I even just wiped it off on my paper towel to make sure I have even less on my brush, and then I'm just going to paint in this whole section with this gray color. And of course, this is the time where you could reshape your beak if you felt that you needed a little bit more shape to it or less shape to it. Now's the time to go ahead and do that. I'm going to just make sure that I have a nice kind of point to my beak in through there. And while this is drying, before I put any additional details on it, I'm going to go and I'm going to put my base coat on for my eye. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown and white. So I have brown and white on my brush, very little bit of both, just a teeny tiny touch on the tip of my brush. And I'm going to create a circular type shape or an oval type of a shape for my eye. So something like this, and just a little tiny eye in through here, nothing really too fancy, just something that's going to give us that just a little oval shape. I think I need it a little bit brighter so we can see it. No sense in doing it if we can't see it. There we go. That looks better to me. And while that is drying, I'm going to come down and do some details on my beak. So I wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black paint, and I'm going to give myself the separation between the top part of the beak and the bottom part of the beak. This is going to come in through here. I'm just giving myself a nice kind of loose, sketcherly line for the for that opening of the beak in through here. And you can make little shadow underneath that bottom part of the beak if you wanted to. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white on my dirty brush, and I'm going to illuminate the top part of this beak in through here and just give myself a little light area. This is, I don't know if I said I was going to use blue or not. You could certainly use a touch of blue as well to get this to look a little bit shinier. So if you wanted to pick up a teeny tiny bit of the cobalt blue, you can incorporate that in this gray area a little bit. That'll give you that extra bit of shine to it. And then I just picked up a little bit more white in order to get this extra bright right here on the tip. And again, I'm assuming my light, or making my light source up in that top right hand corner, but you could have yours wherever you want. That's just wherever it is what's going to dictate where the brightness of that area of the beak is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that eye. I'm going to put a little bit of gray. I picked up my light gray. I'm putting my light gray around the eye in a real sketcherly way in order to give just these little tiny feathery look around that eye. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off, pick up a tiny bit of black paint to give myself a little pupil inside that tannish area, or the brown area that we did. Now I wipe my brush off. I'm picking up a touch of white paint to give myself a little twinkle in that eye. And that's all I'm going to do for the eye. Right in through here, I just want to give those little feather look that I was talking about. So I'm picking up some of my light gray and a touch of water on my brush because I just want little tiny streaks in through here. So a little bit of light gray, little tiny streaks, and maybe a little bit more white just to give myself the appearance a little bit more of the streakiness. So I'm just adding these little tiny pieces of feathers along this top part of the top part of the beak, but it is little feathers too. So just these little itty bitty marks. And again, you could certainly use a little bit of blue if you wanted to. I'm going to actually pick up a tiny bit of black to make sure that my my chalk mark is gone. So I just picked up a little bit of black. You could even use a little bit of black right as it crosses over this bright part in through here, so you can see these little tiny feathers or hairs of the feathers crossing over in through there. And then you just fiddle with it. You can make it brighter or darker. I'm picking up a little bit of my blue and white right now just to do a little bit, maybe little flecks of the blue in through here just to make it a little bit shinier. And then we're going to be using, this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to finish the bird body and head. So this is going to be this section right in through here. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my dark gray, possibly my light gray, blue, white, and possibly black too if I need to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating this nice texture throughout the bird with some shorter kind of down type of fluffy feathers in through here. I want to give the essence of the area where this front wing kind of meets in with the bird, we'll call it the bird shoulder, somewhere in through here. And then we're going to give some nice soft feathers on the head as well with some brightness up here in the forehead. I'm going to start with my darker tones and work my way to the lighter tones, and I'm going to be using mostly a brush stroke that will tell the story of the direction of the feathers. So in through here, I'm going to be kind of dabbing it in this downward type of motion. On the shoulder, I might kind of just rub it towards that shoulder. On the head, I'll probably just bring it back in through here. And on here, I'll use like a stippling type of a technique. So I'm going to start with my dark gray. And I know that I want it brighter kind of as it's protruding out towards the viewer and darker as it goes behind this wing in through here. So I'm not going to do a whole heck of a lot to get this detail on here. I do, because I know I don't need to, but I do know that as I'm going in through here that I need to kind of close this off a little bit, my guideline. I will have another opportunity when I work on this wing, but right now just kind of getting these feathers to start to emerge. And when I do something like this, I really like to let myself run out of paint on my brush, because it allows me to kind of have these strong colored area, and then it fades out where I want it to by just letting myself kind of run out of paint on my brush. So as I want it to get darker, that's where I hardly have any paint on my brush, and I'm working my way towards that dark area. And that just allows me an easy way to create this visual gradient. I'm picking up a little bit of black with my dark gray right now just to close off this edge in through here, because I don't want to worry about that later. So just a little bit to make sure that I've covered or cleared that guideline. Picking up a little bit more of my dark gray. I want to have the essence of some feathers on this face in through here, and just picking up a little bit of water or, you know, paint to get rid of that chalk mark. So as I go through this process, as I'm getting towards these areas that I have some chalk left, I can just get rid of it. In through here, I'm going to bring these kind of back away from the eye. I've got my shoulder in through here, so I'm going to give myself just kind of a light area, or a curved type of area that's going to connect this shoulder to this wing in through here. So that works, and I will lighten it up in a minute, but right now just kind of giving myself the information as to what direction I want these feathers to lay. On the top of the head, I'm just going to bring them back in this curved type of long motion, because I feel like they're just going to be soft on that head. And as I'm coming towards this front, I'm going to just dot them, do the stippling type of technique. So again, what I just did there is I laid out the type of textural effects that each part of the bird is going to have with these feathers. So it's just soft up here, a little bit longer here, and then we have more directional brushstroke in through there. I'm now going to pick up a little bit of my light gray. So on my dirty brush, I just picked up a little bit of my light gray in order to get a little bit more of a visual effect from the light feathers to the dark feathers. So this is where I was saying how I was going to work my way towards the light. So now I've got my light gray on my brush, and I'm enhancing some of these areas with a little bit of the light gray. And in a minute, I will also add a little bit of blue to the equation. But when I do this lighter layer, I know I want to stay a little bit dark underneath this eye in through here, or this bottom side here. So I don't need to make it too light. I don't need to go crazy with it. I just want that lightness to help me to add the form to the body. So I just put a little bit more of my light gray on my brush. I'm going to add some right on this forehead area and get it to kind of fade back onto the top of the head in through here. Again, this is just helping me to add the form and maybe tell a little bit of story about the light source. So I know that my light source is up high in the sky, so that'll give me a lot of lightness on the top of the bird itself. And whenever I do animals, birds with, you know, feathers, animals with fur, I'm constantly thinking of the direction, the length, the curve of that specific type of fur or feather. So that's what I'm doing on this one, is I'm just allowing myself to understand and to emulate the different type of textures. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit on my dirty brush with a tiny bit of cobalt blue on my dirty brush. The cobalt blue is just going to add a little bit of shine to the feathers. These I'm intending them to be kind of really black type of feathers, and the blue will help to not only maybe tell the story that the moon is shining on them, but they're also shiny and they've got reflective qualities to them. As I work my way towards the front of the head, again, just picked up a tiny bit of the cobalt blue, and I'm not going crazy with it, but I do, it is very transparent or translucent, so it will take on the colors that are underneath it. So I don't really need to do a whole lot to it to have it have a good effect. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint on my dirty brush. So I have a tiny bit of white paint. This is where I'm going to enhance my brightest of my brights. So this is definitely the top of the head here. And I've already determined what texture I want these feathers to be on the top of the head. So I'm using my dotting or stippling brush stroke to get this done, and then I'm just kind of working my way towards the darkness. So again, I started where I wanted it to be the brightest, which was up on that top right hand side, and now I can just keep up my dotting or whatever that brush stroke is that I want to use for that area of the feathers or the fur. I just had a little bit too much on that one area, so I just reloaded my brush with a little bit of my white and a touch of the gray. So this will get me to get a little bit darker as I'm going towards this back side. And what I'm going to do is I will let mine dry. I'll look at it from a distance, see if there is any, I just picked up a little bit more white, see if there's any enhancements that I want to make or back off any of the paint in any areas. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to be using my my medium brush for the next step. So you can finish this up, maybe a little bit more on this little top of this shoulder in through here. You can finish this up, put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our wings and our tail feather, which we don't really need to do anything to the tail feather because it's hidden behind there. So we're going to finish our wings. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my dark gray, my light gray, blue, white, and if I need to use any black, I'll use that as well. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a very simplistic approach to creating these feathers that really are looking like we can see the separation between them. So I'm going to be using my bright or my flat brush to create these long type of striped look, but I don't necessarily want it to look exactly like stripes. So I'll be using a combination of the grays to create the illusion of these feathers, these long feathers. The exterior of the wing has almost these layers of, or tiers of feathers. So we'll start with some real long ones down at the bottom, and then we're going to kind of give it a layering type of effect as it goes up the wing. It'll start darker down at the bottom, and we'll do a couple of feathers that cross over. We've already got the start of them in through here. These could act as shadows on the gravestone and or a little bit of a help to separate the wings that or the feathers that we do. I'm going to start here. The trick here is you never need a lot of paint on your brush. If you have a big scoop of paint, your tendency is just going to kind of be to paint it, and it's going to be one flat color. So I'm just going to use a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm just going to give these quick swipes. I do want it a little bit lighter on this right hand side because, again, my light source is over in that direction, and underneath the bird I feel would be darker. If you, during this process you bump into your gravestone when you're doing this one, don't worry about it, because you can, after this step, you can just come through and clean up the edge of that gravestone. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of my dark gray on my brush. So just a little itty bit on my brush, and I'm going to start over here on the right hand side, and I'm just going to give myself this I don't want it to look systematic, so I don't need them to all come out at the same exact angle, but I do want them to look like they're, you know, coming in a downward motion. As I'm coming in through here, I feel like I still have too much gray on my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black as well, so I can just get this little area in through here to have the essence of the feathers, but not go all the way go as light as this. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of my light gray plus a touch of white on my brush. So I have light gray plus white on my dirty brush, and I'm just going to give a couple of little swipes, maybe a little bit more white. Again, less is more. Just a little tiny bright swipe down, and that's going to give me that luminescent type of value just on the edge of that wing over on that right hand side. I'm just going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel to start this one over here. First, before I start this wing, I would make sure that my tail is done because I'm going to be overlapping it. So I see that I have a couple of unfinished spots on my tail. First, I just put a little bit of water on my brush to get rid of my, my chalk mark. Then I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint on my brush just to make sure that I don't have any unpainted spots underneath here. So again, this is just to make sure that my painting is finished. And if I needed to or wanted to, I could certainly pull out my smaller brush, but I think I can do it with this one, and that's working out just fine for me. Maybe just a little bit in through here, make sure that that's nice and done. Now I'm gonna kind of mark off where I want my first tier of this wing to go. So I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of my dark gray. I'm going to have my first tier is going to be coming in through this direction, in through here. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a marker where I want this, where I want the second one to go. So I'm just going to kind of give myself a little bit of a curved type of marker in through here. And then why don't I do that for all the tiers right now? So I'm putting a little bit more of my dark gray on my brush just so we have a place to go. I'm going to go up a little bit from here to here, and again just kind of giving myself this really loose sketcherly edge to where I want these kind of tiers of the feathers to go. I think this will be a nice easy approach. And then I'm going to have another one up at the top. So just this dark gray just gives me that little bit of stopping point. Now I can just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my dark and my light gray. So dark and light gray is on my brush right now, and I'm going to do this bottom tier. And I'm going to have, again, I'm going to get rid of my outline. So that's going to be my first one. And as I'm doing this, again, I'm just kind of in my head saying, this is just the outside edge of these feathers, so I don't need to do too much. I'm really just kind of in this curved manner. I know that they're going to disappear underneath this other tier, so I can just allow for myself to have these carefree long type of strokes in through here. I want this to stay kind of dark, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of my black on my dirty brush just to make sure that I've got a little bit of darkness in through here and it doesn't go too light. And now I'm going to move up to my next tier. If you still have areas in through here with your chalk, you can just use your brush to brush them out, make them disappear, something like that. That works. My next tier, I'm going to have a little bit lighter, so I'm going to go into my light gray on my dirty brush. And I've got similar ones to here over here. So again, I'm just going to, I've got this little curve here. I'm going to take from here and just give myself a couple of these ones in through here, maybe a couple down this back feather in through here, looking for my chalk marks that I can erase. This little guy in through here, and this one's going to have a fun kind of scalloped look to it. So I'm going to take this and just bring it up like this. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my light gray so you can see it. So light gray, and I'm just kind of bring these up towards this other tier in through here. So this is just allowing for me to give this beautiful edge here. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint too. I want this tip to be just a little bit brighter. So just an itty bitty bit of white paint on my dirty brush. Just going to get these little tips of these feathers in through here to emerge a little bit more in this little section like that. That's pretty. And then on this next tier, I'm going to be using my light gray plus white. So if you haven't noticed, every tier I'm getting lighter and lighter. So I have white plus my light gray. Again, I want to make sure that I've got my outline kind of disappeared in through here, and this is where I'm going to be stopping. So I've got light gray plus white, and I can kind of just bring it up in this curved type of manner in through here. These back ones had a little bit more of a wave to them, so I'm going to kind of push my brush and just bring it back like that, something like this. And yours doesn't have to be exactly as mine. This is just very representational of the style of bird in various poses that I was seeing. I was able to detect the layering of these feathers, which was just super cool. Just a beautiful bird. I'm putting a tiny bit of black paint back on my brush. I want to make sure that this edge is closed off, so I just used a little bit of black paint to make sure that that happened. And then I'm going in for my top area with, I'm going to wash my brush because I had black on it. I'm going to use my light gray and white again. So light gray and white, and then we're going to add a little bit of blue to it in a minute as well, just to give it that extra shine. So I've got this this tier in through here, and again, I'm not doing much, and then I've got a light area up at the top just to make sure that that brightness of the moon is evident, making sure I've got this area colored in. I'm going to also get the lightness at the top of this wing over here. I don't need to do much to this wing over here, but that helps. Now I'm going to pick up my light gray plus a teeny tiny bit of blue. So light gray plus a little bit of blue, so I can get just the little hint of a shine in through some of these feathers, especially up towards the top. And if you feel that the blue is too much, just back off of it, use a little bit more gray. Wherever your comfort zone is totally fine. I put a little bit more blue on my brush to get just a little hint of it on these little feathers up in through here. And I add a little bit more. I'm going blue with a little bit of white up towards the top of this one in through here. That's too much blue. I'm going to pick up, I just wiped my brush off. I picked up a little bit more white so I can get this bright area up and through here. And you can see as I did this, I just really built my way up the wing from the bottom and allowed for the bright areas that needed to be bright to really show as being bright. I think actually I'm going to put a little bit more lightness on the top of this head too, just to get that to stand out a bit. And then if you felt that you needed to do anything more, maybe just, I got just the lightness on my brush right now, so I can sit and fiddle as much as I want, maybe putting a little bit more brightness on the tips of these guys in through here. And that's the beautiful thing about a bird like this is, you know, you can enhance the look of it just by accentuating these colors or accentuating the contrast in it. If you want it brighter and more imposing, make, you know, more lights and darks and get those contrasts to really stand out. I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good in through here, just making sure I can see everything as much as I want. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, make any little adjustments that you feel might be beneficial to you, and then you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna paint some vines or grass or whatever you'd like to call it. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, green, and maybe a little bit of white as well. I'm really just going to have some fun with this. I'm going to be having maybe some vines wrapped around this one, lots of stuff coming at the bottom of the canvas, maybe some stuff coming up over on this side. I'll have a lot coming up this left-hand side and maybe some hanging over in this area over here. I'm really using this to just kind of balance the painting out a little bit more so it's not so static with a bird just sitting on here. So this helps to add a little bit more life, a little bit more movement, and all that good stuff that we dream of having in our painting compositions. So I'm going to start with a little bit of black paint on my brush. And I'm going to put some dark stuff in some areas. You can, especially when you're using the black, I'm going to be using probably a little bit of liquid medium or water on my brush as well, so I can get these long continual type of strokes. I want to give the illusion that this is maybe wrapped behind, so some areas I'll slow down like this one in through here, but other areas I will go really quite fast and just let happen what's going to happen. That's going to be a judgment call on your part. You can certainly use this step to hide things if you want to. So if you're going about this process and maybe this corner isn't as finished as you want it to be, just put a little leaf or something in through there. Have fun with it. These this can be representational of whatever you'd like it to be. I tend to just kind of make the essence of leaves and maybe little scrolly marks to give the illusion of, you know, maybe little viney kind of things, but you really, this is up to you. I'm doing mine in just a impressionistic, carefree kind of a way, but you can, oh, that almost looks like a claw. I don't want to do that. So when you're doing it and it turns out looking like something that you didn't expect it, just turn it into something else. So that's looking pretty good into there. Maybe I'll have this kind of coming off in another way over here and here. I'll add some green to it in a minute, but right now just kind of laying out where I wanted those, the vines of sorts to wrap around these gravestones. And then once I've got that laid out, I'll be, you know, just kind of flying through with my other thoughts. I think this one I want to kind of come behind here and then maybe wrap around here. And again, you could use this as decoration. You could, maybe you put some flowers in it. Maybe you want, you know, some, you know, skeleton or something. You can put whatever you'd like in here. Maybe I've got something coming up this side. I'll put some little pieces of grass coming up, and you can see how we didn't do the gravestones in black initially. The gray is allowing us to add these additional details to it and allow this other stuff to appear as its own detail as well. So it helped to add a little bit of variety for us as we want to add additional elements to the painting. So that's looking pretty good down here. I'm going to come over here. I don't want to hide this one all the way, and I also don't want to distract too much from the detail of my bird. So I'm going to just be kind of careful around here that I don't overdo it, I guess. I want it to look pretty natural, but I also don't want to take too much away from my bird with the black heaviness of this wild grass and foliage. So I'll probably put some green stuff closer to the bird, so that way I don't lose the effect of the black side of the bird. I'm going to bring some of this up over in through here, and then maybe I'll have some big stuff kind of coming down this top left-hand corner. I'm going to add, and you can see I'm really just having fun with some swirly type of marks. You can really have them, you know, when I think vines, I just think that they're all twisted around stuff. You know, maybe this is a little bit more twisty in through here. And that's just where my head goes to when I'm thinking vines, but yours could certainly be interpreting it whatever way you want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up some green. So my green is going to act as my color of life in this, in my foliage or of my grass, whatever again you want to consider this to be. You can leave some of this black too. My black is still wet, so as I go through this process of adding the green, the black areas that are still wet are going to mix in with my green, which just makes it look even more natural. I'm purposely leaving some of the black showing also to act as perhaps shadows, so I don't have to put this green right on top of every single piece of black that I did. I will definitely use it strategically to give myself the illusion of grass in the moonlit area that this is, but I don't have to overdo it and take away all that the black silhouette type of look that I just created using the black as the first base color. And of course you can add more you could take away. You can do whatever you want. I'm just using mine so I can have it looking, as, natural as I think it should. In through here, maybe I have a couple pieces going over towards that tail, maybe one or two scooting behind it, but again, I don't want to take away from the bird itself, so I'm just going to be pretty cautious over in this area, and then making sure it kind of just comes out behind this little gravestone in through there, and then as I creep up this right or this left hand side, have it go as bright or as dark as you want. I'm going to put a little bit in through here just with that green on my brush, kind of not really caring if I'm going right on those black areas that I did initially. Just want to give it some sort of fun representation of some vines. And then if I wanted to enhance any of this a little bit, I can certainly pick up a tiny bit of green and white on my brush. You can give those little just essence of little tiny bright highlights here and there, especially on this right side if you wanted to amp up the brightness from the moon onto some of these pieces. Don't be afraid to do so. Just do it if you feel it, and if you don't feel it, then just let it go the way that it is. And then if you have any other areas, like I feel I need to clean up my edge right here on my gravestone, now's my opportunity to do so. And then we have one tiny little step left to go. It's going to be with this small brush. So once you've got all of your vines done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one. I'm using my small brush and I'm using black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol, or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really beautiful bird, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.